I'm Elizabeth, and I am here with my friend and fellow sister, the beautiful Shekinah.
Hi, Elizabeth. Um, yeah, so happy to be here. And today we're meeting to discuss the topic of the solar plexus, um, this spiritual technology and sacred space within us. I like to consider the chakras as temple spaces that we can learn from, tend to, and explore universes within universes.
Mhm.
So we're really excited and passionate about this topic today, which is in alignment with this fiery activating center. But before we begin and dive into this topic, Elizabeth is going to guide us in a 5 minute or short meditation just to ground us in the space and invite our listeners to also feel themselves and fully land and become present to the messages as well as their own um, intuition, instincts, knowledge, and wisdom that they can draw upon as this conversation might help to trigger their own self-awareness um, and track their own journey with the solar plexus in their lives. So go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead, and I would love to start with just a brief, just a little bit of breath work. So I would like to begin with just 3 simple breaths. Just let's go ahead and breathe in, out, breathing in, and out. One more time, breathing in and out. But let's go ahead and get into a quick visualization exercise / meditation. So go ahead and bring your attention to the base of the spine. Let's visualize a tiny red ball of light spinning and see this energy center as a red pin of light. Allow this light to grow and surround your body. And let's move up a few inches to just below the navel, our creative center, and see an orange light spinning there. It is also the size of a pin. As we inhale, we will allow this orange light to grow to the size of a marble and then bigger until it surrounds our bodies. Moving along above to the belly button area, we see a tiny yellow light spinning there. And this little light is the star of the show. This yellow light grows slowly, first to the size of a marble. Then it grows to the size of your hand. Expand it to surround your abdomen, your chest, upper body, and finally it surrounds your whole body. And this is the light of your inspiration. This is the light of your destiny. This light symbolizes your desire to act upon your aspirations and fulfill them. Visualize ribbons of this yellow light infusing your body, starting with the abdomen with warm golden energy, moving to your throat, your head, and down to your lower body. And this yellow light is now surrounding you. This is your shield of confidence. Filaments of this light infuse your whole body with energy. Feel your confidence rising, and with it, feel your desire to try new things. Feel your whole being rising to new challenges and overcoming them. Just sit with this for a second and gently bring your awareness and your attention back to your breath. And gently open your eyes if they weren't already open.
Mm, I love that. That felt really good.
Good. Yeah, it was a really nice visual.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mm. During your meditation, that my solar plexus really felt soothed and softened. Because this process of creating videos is new for us, I still feel kind of knots or like nervousness and tightness in my solar plexus whenever we get started to do something like this. So that's a perfect example of what the solar plexus represents, which is our ego, our
Mm.
identity. It's where we maybe care too much about what other people think, where maybe perfectionism starts to rear its head and prevent you from taking action or facing your fears and moving forward. So maybe we could just start there with the how this center is representative of everything that we identify as our ego identity and our self, how we define ourselves as human beings, and how it also represents the very like the human experience, the vulnerable, like our humanity um, aspect of who we are, which is just one aspect because we are also divine. And
Mhm.
that this feels like a center where we start to embrace or learn how to love the human part of our journey. So do you have
Yes.
to share around the topic of ego and identity, Elizabeth?
Yes, I totally agree, especially with what you were saying in the beginning, how creating videos is something completely new for us. And that meditation was definitely more for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's it's not easy, but once we surrender to it and we let go of what you were describing as the ego, the perfectionism and the self-criticism and caring what other people think, it's really it's so um, relieving to just let go
Mm,
and to just flow. And you realize that when you let go and you just sort of, I have this visual of just falling, letting myself fall backwards. There's a safety net that catches you. It's an invisible, like an invisible hand that just catches you. And it's almost like like the reward for having the courage to
mm,
show up.
yeah.
Despite the knots in our stomach, despite the nervousness, despite the little bit of the physical shakiness that we even feel as we're doing this. I think that a lot of the self-criticism, it's what we're programmed to be, is critical of ourselves. It starts from childhood. Um, when we start to learn and be programmed to the idea that we only get good treatment when we do something good or quote unquote good, or what the caretakers perceive as good. When we do something that they find unacceptable, we notice that we're not receiving that love, we're not receiving that acceptance. And it's really difficult to undo that. I mean, when you're a grown adult, it's a really long process.
Something that came to mind while you were talking was like how the knot softened as soon as, the meditation was supportive, and it continues to soften as we show up authentically as well. So the word authenticity comes into play to support, I
Mm.
think, a healthy relationship with the solar plexus or the ego aspects that are kind of, we've, like you said, been trained to kind of um, like hide in a way. So
Yes.
the repression or denial of anything that isn't good or anything that isn't accepted by the society or how we were raised or told to be. And so then we get more and more afraid to just show up as we are, to regardless like of what we're feeling in the moment. If we're feeling scared or feeling nervous or insecure, if our self-esteem is a little bit feeling low on any given day. It's like we tend to not show up to life or take any action at all because all of that has been programmed into us to shut down, to that it's not acceptable to feel certain feelings, and that we really have to be this put in this box of how to live and be in the society. So self-acceptance, I think, is a major part of the journey of solar plexus, as well as exploring what it means to be authentic in the full spectrum of the human experience. Meaning, if you're feeling angry, you show up acknowledging those feelings, and then projections come into play as well. So learning about the ways that we project what we're denying or rejecting within ourselves. So do you have
Yes.
comments about sort of those themes around the solar plexus and your
Oh,
experience?
absolutely. You know, when you mention authenticity and our true feelings not being accepted, what came to me when you mentioned we spend a lot of our time hiding, what came to me was more like we spend a lot of the time performing. And
Mm.
it's more like we're putting on a show, you know, because how much of what we show to the world is really us? What is authentic to us? Do we even know sometimes? And sometimes it just feels like, you know, you go out into the world, you put on this mask, you put on this face, and it's really all just a performance.
Yeah, in many ways it is. Yes.
Yes, I think that it depends on the individual. I noticed that, yeah, a lot of people tend to hide, and I think that a lot of those would be the introverts.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, like I said, they perform.
Yeah.
And, you know, and the kind of it all boils down to what you said, authenticity, finding you're at the authentic self, the I am, and finding that I am, as we were discussing the other day, that's very essential to balancing your solar plexus chakra. Because if you don't know who you really are authentically, then what are you chasing after? How do you
Mhm.
know that what is motivating you to wake up every morning is it really just only motivation, or is it actual divine inspiration? How do we
Yeah.
know? How do you know that your actual goal is to want to travel the world one day? You know, you're saving all of this money, you want to buy this house. Is that really what people want? How do we know that? You know, and if we don't have a balanced solar plexus chakra, we're really never going to know. We're always going to be doing what we were told we want to do. We've been told what we want since we were young. We've been told that we want a good career, we want to make X amount of money, we want to own a home one day, we want to travel the world. But that all just seems so, I almost want to say very cookie cutter.
Mhm.
When we're all so different and unique, how can we all possibly want the same thing? It makes absolutely no sense.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think even a prerequisite for authenticity would be individuation,
Mm,
like really uh, looking at and asking the questions like, who am I as a unique individual in this world? What is my and so then like what is my authentic self-expression? Because the solar plexus is about reclaiming selfhood and your individual unique divine spark or expression of God, which is in totally unique. So uniqueness comes into play here, and the only way to discover that is by asking, self-reflecting and asking the questions and really going inside your own heart, um, to understand who you are and then
mm,
accepting that, because we can just the programming to reject ourselves and to go against ourselves and to make decisions that go against the self, that's what creates the knots and tension and the digestive issues of our culture, because we're constantly being asked and even encouraged, and it's like promoted and celebrated to take decisions that go against self. This is the center where we eventually transcend the ego and align personal will with divine will,
Yes.
which is the free will of our higher self, is how I look at divine will. So, you know, it's the heart's desire. It's the part of us that, like, it's like what we know is good for us, what we really truly want, but we're too afraid to claim for ourselves than to pursue and to embody that path. But before that, it's like you have to, like, if you are identify as, you know, like your lineage or your heritage, like fully claim that and fully own that so that there's no rejected aspects. Because your ego, there will be a tipping point where if you've gone to the point of over identifying with anything that you feel resonant with or want to identify as, if you get to the point of over identification where you're creating suffering through that over identification, so there's like, you have to identify in order to transcend.
Mm.
And it's just layers. So like identify, transcend, identify, transcend. So it's like, then for me, that's healthy ego integration rather than like trying to get rid of the ego. You
Yes.
you claim it. So there was a time in my life where I was really entering into this universe, this portal and temple of the solar plexus, and I wanted to know about my ancestry. And so I went down rabbit holes and faced all of the, like, the shame and the um like confusion around being like a mixed race person, having Cree ancestry on my mother's side and like Scottish ancestry on my dad's side, and this like battle between um like First Nations or Indigenous First Peoples and the settlers that came over, you know? So there's like this literal war within me that was reflected in the external world, but it truly was something that I was feeling, like this inner conflict. And I had to like go down the rabbit hole. I had to like over identify or reclaim and go on this mission of reclamation of my indigenous ancestry, because that's the part of me that was so rejected and so denied and so silenced. And I think it was good to a point, but then I started getting to a place where needing to be seen as an indigenous woman was creating tremendous amount of suffering for me, because I was not getting it. I was
Mm.
not getting the acknowledgement that my ego really wanted, like, because I was seeking for belonging. And the lesson was that I belong in my own heart, right? But I had to go down that, is like, otherwise it would still be this kind of subconscious kind of monster building up, and I would continually be in this duality consciousness of thinking around what's right or wrong. And so I literally grieved as though I was shedding and letting go of that identification, which allowed me then to expand to understand different lineages that I was connected to that have nothing to do with my human bloodline, but like you get
Mhm.
into galactic, you know, heritage.
Oh
And for
yeah.
like you continue to expand. Now identify with, you know, Arcturian star lineage or Andromeda. And I'm exploring what it means to like have that reclamation. And if there's ever a point when it's creating suffering or I'm going overboard with that over identification, then another ego death and the next level of expansion. So, do you have any personal experiences around that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, everything you said. For me, it manifested a little bit differently. For me, growing up, both of my parents are Mexican. They're both from Mexico. So there was a lot of Mexican culture influence for me growing up, to the point where I kind of felt that I was being sort of sucked in, for lack of a better word, into something that I actually wasn't. I
Mm,
felt like I didn't always identify with everything from my parents' culture, well, which is my culture too. But see, even wording it to me, It doesn't come out the way that it probably should, but I didn't really identify with a lot of their customs and a lot of their traditions. In fact, I didn't identify with any of them growing up whatsoever. So, with all of that influence around me, I had a lot of resistance when it came to trying to identify myself as who I wanted to become, because that was always really frowned upon in my home. And it was frowned upon to not conform. And I remember one of my parents literally telling me one day, why can't you just conform and be happy? And that made absolutely no sense, but it was just a beautiful lesson to me. It was more of a test, and it was it was a process to sort of, not only did I have to work with finding my own true identity, my own uniqueness, but I had to do it in a way to where I wasn't offending my family. I just wanted to communicate that I wanted to be my own person. And I don't really identify with cultural traditions at all. I don't identify with any culture. Um, so that was more of my experience. I was trying to sort of pull away from my lineage, my human lineage. And when I discovered, that I was a star seed, that felt more like home. Pleiadian felt like home. I thought, okay, this is the family that I was waiting for. When I was growing up, I honestly thought that I was adopted. That's how much I didn't identify with my family. I really thought that I was switched at the hospital, and one day my real family is going to come and find me, and they're going to take me away, and they're the ones that I resemble. But well, no, it turned out that I wasn't adopted. I really am my parents' child. And honestly, when I was little and I realized that I'm not adopted, it was actually very disappointing to me, because I thought, this can't be right.
Mm-hmm.
This, I didn't feel that they were my family. Like, it was interesting for my experience was very, I want to say it was unique, but I'm wondering if there are many more people out there who go through this, but they don't really speak about it because maybe they feel bad, maybe they feel guilty disidentifying from their family lineage. But that was my reality. I did not feel a connection to my earth family. I did not feel a connection to my earth heritage, my earth culture. I was always I feel more connected to my galactic family, but like you said, that's just another layer of the ego,
Mm-hmm.
And so once I worked on peeling off that layer, I started shifting over to, that's when I started working with identifying and aligning with God consciousness. And now that feels more like home. Working on identifying with my God self. It's like, okay, this is my family. God is my family. And although I chose to incarnate or to reincarnate in my family lineage, um, it was much more healing knowing that well, it was healing, discovering my God self identity, because that made me more accepting of my earth family and my earth lineage.
Yes.
There was no more resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my experience. It was kind of wild, really. And as a child, you don't know how to articulate these feelings and these thoughts that you're having. I want to go home. You have this longing for wanting to go where you quote unquote came from, but you have no idea where that is, because you look around you and you're like, well, my parents say this is my home. These are my parents. This is my home. This feeling is very confusing to me. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel like home, but it is my home, but it doesn't feel like home. So it
Mm-hmm.
actually created a lot of imbalances, not only in my solar plexus, but in my heart chakra, which is going to be our next topic. But yeah, what it caused for me in the solar plexus area wasn't, it made me feel very disempowered, this entire time that I was going through those challenging feelings growing up. It was very disempowering for me because I felt so helpless and lost. I had no
Mhm.
answers. And so I developed a very underactive solar plexus. I almost want to say just like a very, it was very depressing. I
Mhm.
actually experienced bipolar depression.
Mhm.
And it's almost like you lose your will to live. It's actually a really sad experience.
Yeah, it's a lack of vitality, vigor,
Yes.
exuberance, passion for life, and I would say even like purpose and mission, a sense of mission or just divine purpose and meaning. I think it's about that I am presence and that you start to identify more with your divinity, with your God self, rather than the limited human perception and limited human experience of just ego identification. Um, that's where like traumas and abuses to this center can really create a lot of havoc on your health, because we are talking about energy levels and vitality and life force when it comes to the topic of the solar plexus. That then the projections start where it's like, all of that was repressed and denied starts getting projected onto your relationships, and that's where the blaming and the victimization, and then coming back to the middle way where your relationships start to show you and mirror back to you. um,
Yes. When it comes to journeying with the solar plexus chakra, I think relationships are a blessing, and not only relationships as in having a partner, but even friendships, because just like you just said, your whoever you're involved with in your life is a mirror and it's reflecting yourself. But the thing is that the ego is so tricky that the vast majority doesn't catch that.
mhm,
The vast majority gets stuck in projection. But if you really can get past that and really see the other person as a mirror to you, that's where you can begin the healing journey of the solar plexus area. You really have to analyze and reflect, what is this individual mirroring back to me?
mhm,
That's really when, like, kind of like you said, not the ego death. We don't want that because the ego is part of humanity. We can't escape it. That would be like trying to run away from ourselves. You learn so much about yourself when, well, through other people.
yeah.
And we all are each other's teachers, really, and those who we are involved with the most, those are the people who are here to teach you the most. It
Mhm,
doesn't mean you're going to like them. Usually, the person that really gets on your nerves the most, that's going to be usually your biggest mirror.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
the ego doesn't want to see that, but yeah, I would love to hear what you have to add to that.
Yeah, I would just the word initiation comes up. So, we all probably have at least one or two relationships where it's like the conflict was so knotted up. Like it's like, what is this? How come there's perpetual conflict in this relationship? And I think, when we arrive at that I am ability to embody your I am presence and to identify with your God self and see the reflection, not by enmeshing with others and not by like losing your boundary of separation or individuality, but when you can just see the mirror, as you said, then that relationship serves as like the initiation for you
Mm,
to understand your empowerment in the situation and how to navigate it. What needs to happen in order for your solar plexus to relax and not feel all tight and in knots in the presence of that individual who seems to trigger you or where there's constant conflict. A thing you mentioned the other day when we were having a meeting about how your environment can have
mm.
more power over you over your will until you put the power behind your will. So can you speak to that a little bit, Elizabeth? I found that
Yeah,
so amazing when
yeah.
we
Well, you also put it beautifully too. It's kind of a straight to the point thing. I was put in many situations where my environment would break me down. I was
Mhm.
always being run down by my environment. It was always trampling all over me, physically, mentally, emotionally. And, finally, what I got out of it is, this is, I think this is just life. I don't think the problem is the environment. The problem is me. I am the only constant here, me. So I had to learn to exercise my will to become stronger and rise above the toxicity, and you know how they say the light is stronger than the darkness, but you have to embody that light in order for that to really take place, in order for that to manifest in the physical reality. You have
Mhm.
to illuminate the darkness instead of running away from it. That's Yogananda's teachings, but yeah, it was just confirmation of everything that I've experienced. So I think that there should be more emphasis on strengthening this power center so that the world doesn't overpower you.
Because I felt the same way about environments. Like I just felt so vulnerable to toxic environments.
Mm,
And I realized it's like I need to figure out how to raise my vibration, feel stronger in my body, reclaim my health. And so a lot of the things that the root and sacral teach us is to help us to get to be able to be strong in our will center and to stay
mhm,
centered and not overpowered by the external, but
mm.
actually let our internal light affect the environment. Um, so I love that. It's just kind of,
Yeah.
if there's a pattern, or like there's almost like a system. It's like the chakras are, they're an intelligent, divine, spiritual technology. They're a system that is designed for us to achieve self-realization and God realization. And
Yes.
that it's just so amazing.
It's getting
Um,
out of victimhood, really.
exactly. So what helped me was, okay, so I was in toxic environments. Again, it's like the pendulum. That's how my constitution works. It's almost like I have to go to extremes to find the middle path. But I needed to create a sanctuary around me in order to do the practices, to exert my willpower, to do whatever it is that I knew I needed to do to get right with me and to start honoring me and stop going against the self. So what practices did you do? What things helped to support you to feel stronger in your will center?
It was such a long journey, but I was very committed. And that's the word that comes to me is commitment. That's what you really have to exercise
Mhm.
to balance that center. But the very first step that I took was set the intention and deciding that I wanted to break the cycle. You really have to, that desire really has to come from the heart space. You can't just say, oh, I want to, break out of my negative habits, my negative patterns, and but still find comfort in those negative patterns. You really have to acknowledge that, like, wow, this is very uncomfortable. This is getting to the point where this is probably shortening my lifespan. This is not healthy. This is literally killing me physically and it's killing my soul. You really have to have a deep desire. And that's really the first step, is to set that intention. And that's sort of, in a sense, that's an action you're taking that's coming from the solar plexus. Setting an intention is taking an action.
Mhm.
And after that, I started developing a spiritual routine where every morning I was waking up and I started making a gratitude list. I started writing letters to my higher self. Um, and right there, I was starting to build a muscle
Yep.
from scratch, really. That's kind of what it felt like, starting, trying to build a muscle from scratch. I didn't know how to meditate, but that didn't stop me. I would fall asleep with meditation music. When I was doing mindless tasks, I was listening to solar plexus meditation music. I was doing very simple things, but by taking those small steps and setting the intention, you're really letting the universe know that you're ready. And the universe, of course, it's the law that it has to match you. It has to match your intentions. and it has to match your actions. That's how manifestation works. So I
Mm-hmm.
started being guided to more spiritual tools that were aligning me. I started stumbling upon different people, encountering different books.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my YouTube feed all of a sudden was bringing up stuff that was more conducive to my growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And eventually I reached a point where, what comes to mind is, and it's an ongoing journey, just like you said, it really never ends. A really big turning point for my solar plexus chakra was actually working with you, Shekinah, because ever since I started working with you, now we're all of a sudden creating these videos. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say that's very evidential of, that's evidence of how working together, when you really set the intention and you really start doing the homework, you start putting in the reps. My work together, my co-creation with you, Shekinah, has been very solar plexus centered. You really took me on a deep journey with Green Tara. And when we did the 21-day journey with Green Tara, that was a huge monumental shift for me. That was incredibly transformational. That healing took me up kind of it rose up towards the solar plexus, and that's when Green Tara came along. So when you integrated Green Tara into the Odyssey dance journey, that was so, I would say that is the, I don't know, the, what do you call it? The frosting on the cake.
Yeah. The cream cheese icing on the cake. Well,
There you
not
go. Yeah,
not
yeah.
everything.
Pretend I said that. That was the icing on the cake right there, because it was like my solar plexus. Yeah, I had already been working on it on my own, and it took me to a certain point, but there was still another level, another wall to break through. And the journey with you with Green Tara, it really broke through that wall, because I really feel like I'm on holy fire now. It's like anytime we were working together in that space, it was like a being inside of a magical little cloud, like a beautiful little bubble of yellow solar plexus energy creation.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, so I think that has been the biggest breakthrough that I've ever experienced in regards to my solar plexus, because I really feel like I'm really loving this. Like, I'm loving this new me, It's like this, I always had that Leo side of me, my Leo moon, but it was always hiding. Of course, it's my moon sign, right?
mhm.
But now it's like that Leo moon is integrating with my sun.
Like the power of an eclipse, which is
Beautiful.
entering eclipse season. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Integrating Uranus and the lunar.
it was an incredible experience, and you really have to be ready. You have to be ready to show up. I did whatever I had to do because I just wanted it so badly. I was just so tired. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. That desire, that drive, I really just, I kept showing up for those 21 days. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I was rewarded beyond my imagination. I have so much more courage now. I have so much more love for myself. I have so much self acceptance. And of course, that, self critical voice is always going to be there, but you just learn to just sort of observe it like a child throwing a tantrum. And then you just have to be your own parent and say, okay, sweetie, I get it. You're insecure, but I say we're going to do it, so we're going to do it. And
Yeah.
that's your solar plexus coming through.
I love that. Just you sharing you touched on so many things and points, like keywords, resonances, trigger words to help anyone who's struggling with their willpower or a sense of like self motivation, discipline. If you're struggling with following through on
Mhm.
the guidance that you get, the little ideas or sparks of inspiration that you get that you know are good for you, that you know would make you happier and healthier and more productive member of society, or that would help you to put out your creations and your heart and soul, or to share that with the world, and aligning your will and your ego with your heart center, because there was parts of you that was like, "Oh, I'm too tired," or I don't you mentioned the other night when we were talking, and you were a little bit like, like I have to get up again this morning and do this." And you compared it to like how our culture, how we're so programmed to show up to like corporate jobs, for example, like a
Oh
9 to
my
5
God,
job
yes.
that we hate. We'll get up and do whatever it takes to show up to that job we hate. Yet when it comes to something that initially inspired you, that like resonated with you, that made your heart excited, something that was like self-loving and expanding and taking you to the next level of discovering even more of who you are, and changing your life in a direction because you are sick and tired of the same old pattern. Or it's like, for me, it's like I was like suffering so much that I was just like, something's got to change. Like I can no longer survive the amount of suffering that I'm keep choosing to to endure, that I keep
Yes.
that I'm addicted to. So it was like the tipping point, like enough is enough, something has to change. And so I think self-love, I mean, it's kind of a catchphrase. It's like, it can be left on that superficial plane, but like it
Mhm.
is such a deep journey
It is.
to live a life of self-love. And you mentioned like one step at a time, which makes me think of like the phrase that we often read about or hear in the teachings of the Sophia Code is like one self-loving step at a time.
Yes.
And that's so relevant for the union and like creating flow between the solar plexus and the heart, because self-love is a heart generated action, and it requires follow through.
Yes.
And the
It
follow
really does.
will create momentum in the direction of your dreams and your heart's like truest desires. What we're doing in the solar plexus is self-loving our humanity.
Yes.
We're acknowledging that and loving the human experience, which will allow us to access the higher self, our God
Mhm.
self, our I am presence, however you want it, our divinity, and start to identify more and more with our divinity, which allows us to expand beyond the limited human experience, and just have like so much fun in that expansion of our consciousness. So
Right. And as you were speaking, what came to me was when you're taking action towards self-love, you can really feel how your will is aligning with divine will. Like that's what it is. You're taking actions, will towards towards self-love. Yeah, that, and that's what's more divine than love.
like love, because the solar plexus has to do with our energy as well. um, Willpower by itself isn't very sustainable, and I think that's
Mm.
what like our culture can get, like when you swing into that extreme of like do and like goals and orient and forcing and pushing things to happen. I
Staying
mean,
productive all the time.
yeah, I would say that's the excess, or when there's an excess amount of energy in that solar plexus. However, if it's not aligned with love, if it's not aligned with like the heart's desire, it won't flow. You'll always feel like you're forcing or pushing or swimming upstream instead of flowing with and attuning yourself, like paying attention to that divine guidance, the inspired action downloads that you get, and following through on that. There's a much greater ease and flow to being an action oriented person, or to act to, what is the word, like to be proactive. So
Mm.
that proactivity becomes sustainable when it is aligned with the heart. If it's only in the ego center of like forcing or pushing or proving yourself in the world, you will burn out.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. It's kind of how we were also discussing the other day. There's a difference between motivation and inspiration.
Mhm. And both are important, you know? It's like motivation is still beautiful, you know? It's just recognizing imbalances. It's
Yeah,
recognizing when we're kind of in one spectrum or the other and just continuing to self-correct or course correct and tune in and create a more sustainable pathway that feels really good.
it's worth it because it's I almost want to say it's a guarantee. You know, it's a guarantee. You will get rewarded with you'll discover things that about yourself that you didn't even realize was within you. That's what's
Mhm.
awesome about the solar plexus. It's a journey of self-discovery.
Yes. Which leads to self-transformation, which I think is the purpose of the solar plexus. Do you have any final comments or things that you want to share about this, about the solar plexus?
No, I'm just, just I feel a really great sense of pride. I'm really proud of myself for overcoming a lot of the challenges that I have because these were challenges that have been following me since from childhood. And, to be here at a point where I can tell my story or parts of my story and be at a point where I feel so grounded and centered in this energy space it's beyond rewarding. It's like I almost want to say it's miraculous.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so beautiful, and I feel the same way. I didn't ever I couldn't imagine actually how it would feel when I worked out some of these issues in this particular center. It feels so amazing, so empowering. I
Mhm.
think that's a huge word for this center. That's the gift of doing this work, this deep self work and this deep healing work and taking a look at beliefs and your programming and all of the projections that were placed upon you that in subtle ways, just kind of insidious ways, kept you making decisions that went against your true nature, that went
Mm,
against your natural way of being and your natural self and your natural way of expressing who you are as a unique individual soul and light on this planet. um, the result of doing the work, and I could say for me it was years, and it doesn't have to take years. I think we always have the possibility of instantaneous healing and miracles and
right.
accelerating our path, but it does take commitment, it takes focus, it takes even self-discipline and devotion,
Yes.
and the desire to make the changes and to catalyze transformation in your life. So, but the reward is so amazing, and to finally feel empowered and not so victimized by the world situation, not so victimized by the environments we find ourselves in that are toxic.
Mhm.
And so to take real, true self responsibility for who you are and your own energy and your own experiences, I think is a huge step in the right direction.
Yes. It's quite the beautiful journey. Well, you won't think that while you're in the journey, but afterward, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, I feel like we'll wrap it up maybe,
Yeah.
and I'll just close with a short little grounding and meditation for us to do. So I'll invite everyone who's watching to close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in through the nose and slowly out. Another nice deep breath. And just relaxing, softening your physical body as you exhale. And if it feels good for you to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your solar plexus, I have a few affirmations that I'll share that you can repeat silently to yourself or out loud. I honor the power within me. I accomplish tasks easily and effortlessly. The fire within me burns through all blocks and fears. I can do whatever I will to do. So you can open your eyes and we'll just, I think, end there. I got those affirmations. I want to credit the book that I found them in, which is Eastern Body, Western Mind.
Oh,
And, it's an amazing book on the chakras. If you, for people out there that want to learn more and take themselves on a self-guided, self-initiated journey, which is
mm,
perfect word for solar plexus. Initiate
right.
yourself through the journey, and check out Yogananda's teachings as well. It's been a huge inspiration to
Yes.
Elizabeth, and whenever I hear her talk about how he's inspired her life, it makes me want to dive into his teachings too. So,
Yes.
and yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, so much. This was so much fun, and I look forward to more creating.
Yes, thank you as well. Thank you for being patient with my technical difficulties, but our solar plexus chakras kept us determined.
Yeah, we pushed through, and it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, so we'll see y'all next time.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Thanks for watching. Bye.